Welcome to the Generation Lyme podcast. My name is Jesse Ruben. I'm on the board of Generation Lyme, and I am joined here by fellow board member Brooke Stoddard, as well as two of our very distinguished and very special hosts. Our Generation Lyme hosts are amazing. We love them, and we have two here tonight. We have Fallon Tegman and Grace Shults. Hello, ladies. How are you doing?
Hi.
Hi.
Doing good.
Yeah, doing good.
I just want to point out that we're recording this on a day when some super weird news came out of the Supreme Court today, and so I'm extra grateful that you guys are here, because I'm sure it has been a very tough day for both of you, as well as most human beings in general. So thank you for joining us.
Of course.
We are going to be talking about community today. This is part of our series of having a podcast every month about the previous month's monthly topic. Last month was community, and so Brooke and Grace and Fallon are all experts in community, and so that's why we decided to have them all here together. We just want to start with a super easy question, open-ended, answer it however you want. Grace, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
What does community mean to you? When I say the word community, when you hear that word, what does that mean? Whether in relation to Lyme or family or just life in general, what do you think of when you think of community?
Support, which I know is a past topic, so I'm like synthesizing it in there. But but I think it's like a larger version of family. I think it's people who are around you, who give you support and you support them, who are like you and you're like them, but you're also different from them, which I know is kind of confusing, but I think it's true. It's kind of a broad thing. And truthfully, I think it's a very necessary thing. It's a part of our identity. We belong to a lot of different communities in our life, right? And I'm very proud to be a part of this one. So that's what community means to me. It means a group of people who is just, I think, there for each other. That's what I think.
Well, we are very fortunate to have you as part of our community, for sure. Not the least of which because you are always the one who steps up and fills in for us when we need a host.
I know. They were like, they needed somebody tonight. I was like, I got a podcast to do, guys. So
I know. I
to
saw
do
that.
it.
I was getting worried we were going to lose you.
Yeah.
Fallon, what is the word community mean for you?
Yeah, so I echo Grace's sentiment of support. And I think support and also like people to learn from. I think the ability to listen to other people and be listened to. I think that's the thing. The support aspect is people being willing to listen. And then I think, yeah, being able to allow others to support them. You know, it's like a mutual give and take that I think is really lovely. Yeah, and I think the way everyone interacts with community is very different, or I guess everyone's role in community is really different. And so I think it's a special thing. And yeah, I mean, I honestly went years and years without a community before Generation Lyme. I mean, family, all of that, it all is community in its own, but without a chosen community, which this has become: chosen community, chosen family. So yeah, I think community is fantastic.
Brooke, what does the word community mean for you?
Yeah, well, it's nice I get to go last. I got to think of my answer. Thanks for going first, Grace and Fallon. But you both used the word people in your response, and people is what comes to my mind first. So at its simplest form, for me, a community is a group of people who have something in common. For example, you know, when I went to college, I had a community of people who went to that college, and at work, I have a community of people that I work with. And for, you know, Generation Lyme, what's amazing about this community is many things, but we all have one thing in common, which is that our lives have been affected by Lyme or you know, another co-infection. And so to me, that point can't be minimized. I mean, it's like Jesse, Haley, Fallon, you're wonderful people, and I only know you because our lives were affected by Lyme, and we found each other through this particular Lyme-based community.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I went to music school for college, and people would always ask like what that was like, and I would say that it's the same as going to any other school, except the one thing that connects everybody is that there's some instrument they play, some passion for music, but other than that, you know, you had different ages and genders and socioeconomic status, all these different things. And I guess, yeah, that's what it is at Generation Lyme too. You have all these people from all over the world coming in on these calls or sharing their stories, and they all look different, act different, have different backgrounds, all these things. And then there's this one huge, crazy, terrible thing that just connects all of us. I really loved, Grace, that you used the word family when you talked about community, because I really resonate with that. I don't think I'm in a lot of I think I choose my communities very carefully, and the ones that I'm in I really care about, and then I end up like I've spoken to the rest of the Generation Lyme board more in the last 2 years than anyone else on the planet besides my wife, and it's not even close, you know. So yeah, I mean, to me, community and family are definitely interchangeable for sure. But then
Yeah.
Fallon, I also loved just people who listen is like such a huge part of it, because especially when you're dealing with in the context of Lyme disease, when you're alone in that and no one is listening to you, God, that is just the worst.
Yeah.
So Fallon, you mentioned something that I would like to touch on, that you said you had no community, Lyme disease specifically, you had no community for years before you found Generation Lyme. So, and I remember the first time I spoke to you on the phone to go over the host handbook with you all many moons ago. But I guess I'm wondering how you found us, and also what were your initial hesitations about getting on a call or checking it out or anything?
Yeah, it's funny because it's been so long. I don't know if I had first found the Instagram or what, but I know I followed y'all, and then Jess, the creator of the women's meetup, I think posted about it on her stories or something. And so that is how I knew, I think that I first saw meetups were a thing. And it was months. Like I remember like going to the website and seeing the little picture of all the little squares of y'all on Zoom and being like, that's scary. Like, because like being a person and communicating is a lot sometimes.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think I kept putting it off until I got to a point where I was like, that's enough. I desperately need this. And I think honestly, I've seen that in people. Like I see myself like every time a new person comes to a meetup, that there's often like I've thought about it for a long time and not done it. And then sort of that, like, is it okay for me to take up space? You know, like people talk really fast and then it's like a minute and they're like, I'm done. Like I yield the floor back to you. And I think like it's scary. So it isn't scary. We're not scary. But the idea of showing up and talking to people that you don't know, especially about this giant thing that we all go through that makes us really vulnerable, that we often have not had great responses to before. I think, yeah, it's, I'm glad I did it, but I understand people's trepidation if there ever is any.
Yeah.
It's a big step.
I love what you said so much, because so often on the calls, not on the calls, just in life in general, you see people who are apologizing for taking up space. And I don't know what that is, and I hate it so much. And yeah, because we want as many people as possible, right? Like we want everybody. And you have people that are knowing that they should join and sitting at home and going like, oh, but nobody wants to hear what I have to say. You know, so if you're listening to this and you haven't joined a call, you haven't joined a meetup, we desperately want to hear what you have to say.
I learn something from someone new every time I hear like just something about life in general, you know, so come to a meetup, you know, do it.
Yeah. We want to meet you.
Yeah.
Fallon, I have to ask, do you remember, like, was there a specific thing that happened where you were like, all right, enough is enough, I'm getting on the meetup tonight? Or was it just like a general terribleness that was just pervasive in your life at that time?
I think I've told this story before, but I'll briefly. Yeah, I was speaking with someone who said some not kind things about just he basically was like, I don't want you to tell anyone about your illness moving forward, because his perception was that it was not inspirational. He wanted me to wait until I was better and could talk about being on the other side of it. And so he was like, until that point, I don't want you to tell anyone about it. And I was so incensed. I was like, oh, there have to be people who understand why I need to talk about this now. And I did, like, it made me like need to talk about it then. So that was Wednesday. And I woke up on Thursday and was like, yeah, I need to go.
Yeah. And that is what we call ableism. And we could have a whole separate podcast about that.
Yeah.
Grace, were you hesitant about Generation Lyme? Did you join the meetups like right when you found out about us? How did you find out about us? What was that? What was going through your mind when you found? Just tell us about how great we are.
Okay, I will. I can always do that. So I've been kind of open about this. I got sick really young. I'm not old, believe it or not. I'm young, but I got sick as a baby. I am a baby. I think I'm not sometimes, but I am. I'm only 21. But I got sick when I was 17. I was in high school, and I lost every sense of community. I was a very involved kid. I did the dorky stuff. I flipped flags. I was in the color guard. That was like my thing. I was good at it.
Incredible.
It was super fun. It was super fun. There are videos out there of me doing it, and I was not good at it, but at least it was fun. But I got sick, and then like I just got really lost. I like lost my way. You know, I was like, if I don't have school and I don't have, you know, whatever, what am I? So I kind of was like drifting out in the wind for a while. And then a few years passed. I actually graduated high school a year early from my bed because when I got sick, and then I kind of have done school by myself. So I didn't really get the college community experience. I've done most of it from my bed. But I found Gen Lyme pretty much about a year ago, I guess. And I was like, because I literally, the week before I found you guys, I said to my mom, nobody's ever going to understand this. Like, they just don't, especially here where I'm from, like Ohio, it's just not talked about here. It should be, because we're in an area where you think that people get bit by ticks, but it's just not. So I was like, I'm just going to be alone and I'll have to figure it out, you know? And that's a really kind of a sad thing for a 20-year-old to say. But I found Gen Lyme.
That's a horrifying thing.
It's really bleak. Yeah, it's really bleak for a kid to say, you know? So I kind of said to my mom, I was like, I found this like thing through like a Facebook group. Like there was like one of the Lyme Facebook groups, which if you know me, I have kind of a contentious relationship with like the local Facebook groups, but they were like, I go to Gen Lyme meetings, and I honestly have no idea who posted it. I kind of wish I could remember who it was. But I was like, what is this? So I found you guys' Facebook group. I was like, all right, I'll go to a meeting and I'll see what it's about. And then I actually think it was a Burning Questions. It must have been, or I don't know. I went to that one and you hosted it, and you were like, oh my God, you're so young. And you're like doing all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, but it was just nice because I left that meetup and I was like, I could like take a deep breath, because I was like, oh my God, there really are other people in the world that are like dealing with this. And because I heard people of all ages, all different backgrounds being like, I went to all these doctors, nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. And like, that was like the majority of the end of my teen years, you know, and into my 20s now. So it was just like, I don't have a community, and now I feel like I have one. So it was like, and then I felt kind of a responsibility, because I just was like, I feel like I need to give back from like what I've been, like what I've gotten from this. So that's why I went, oh no, there's like a thunderstorm happening here. But
very dramatic.
I was like, what I got from this, very dramatic, right? But what I got from this, I just feel like I got so much out of it that I've like, that's why I'm really dedicated to like hosting and volunteering with the Lyme advocacy stuff and doing that kind of stuff. Cause I'm just like, I got so much from this community, and I feel like this community doesn't get much back from like the world, you know? So I'm like, well, I got a loud mouth and I love to talk, so I'll just keep talking about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of my spiel. But yeah, so I wasn't afraid. I'm pretty extroverted. But I was nervous just to be like vulnerable, like Fallon said, like this is obviously a very sore subject for all of us, but it's nice to like meet people, just be like, I'm not going to tell you this doesn't suck because it sucks, you know. And
Yeah.
it was just like, thank you, I don't need anybody to tell me anything different, I just need somebody else to say this sucks, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what I got from it for sure.
I just remember being obsessed with trying to find somebody who understood what I was going through.
Yeah.
Like obsessed,
Yeah.
like telling everybody. And all I wanted was to like share my experience and have someone not go, well, but have you thought about it? Like some stupid, like, well, maybe you need to like exercise more, or are you sure that you're not depressed or whatever? Like
Yeah.
I was so obsessed with the idea that somebody would understand what was happening to me while also being completely terrified that I had this crazy random medical anomaly thing happening in my body that no doctor or medical professional had ever seen before, and I was the only one that had it, and no one was ever gonna fix it, and it was never gonna go away, and it was just horrible. It's
It
just
was horrible.
horrible.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Brooke, let's talk about the beginning of Generation Lyme for a second. Because there was a period where Generation Lyme was literally nothing but Brooke and I on a call every week, just the two of us trying to figure out what we were gonna do. We knew we wanted to do something to help people, and we didn't know what to do. Brooke, do you remember how we sort of came up with the stories and meetups thing? Because I don't really. I just remember that it happened, but I don't remember how we went from you and I being like, well, what should we talk about today? To like, here's what we're doing and here's what it's going to look like, you know?
Yeah, I remember a little bit. A couple of years ago, Jesse, when you and I were having those types of phone calls, we have to give credit to two of our friends at the time, John Donnelly and Zach Adler.
For sure.
They helped to create Generation Lyme many years ago, and I would credit John as having the stories idea and Zach as having the meetups idea. And over time, we worked on both of those and found them, I think, to be unique and valuable to a lot of people with Lyme disease who are looking for a modern, supportive Lyme disease organization. And the more, I think, like positive reinforcement that we got from Lyme patients and their supporters that these were two things that they wanted and needed, the more we worked on them. And so the origins were, ideas, but we still, I think, focus on meetups and we focus on stories because we're not only good at them, but not every organization focuses on them. And I think we recognized that we could focus on them and do them both justice and help a lot of people that way. And hence the community was kind of built as a like a like the conclusion to working so hard on those two things. I think I mean, Jesse, we very early on established that Generation Lyme was going to be a community for young people with Lyme disease.
Yeah.
But now it feels like a community. I think back then what I was worried about was, could we authentically help people share their stories in a way that made them feel really excited and proud that they were telling their story publicly? And could we come up with a meetup format that was so supportive and inclusive and created a sense of belonging that people had a good experience and wanted to come back? And I think we figured those things out over time, but it wasn't just an overnight thing.
Two things that listening to you talk brought up. One was, I remember throwing out like all these different ideas, and it was like, okay, do we want to be mediocre at lots of things, or do we want to be the best at these two things? Like, we should just be the best at these two things. And that was really like, we're not raising money, we're not doing research. There are other organizations doing that. Shout out to Project Lyme for being awesome and doing that. And it was like, how can we help people right now? Like right today, right now, how can we do it? And it was like, by connecting them with other people who get it. And the thing that I will never forget, one of the first things we did with Generation Lyme was when we decided we were going to share stories was we hired a photographer, and this was before the pandemic, we got all of these Lyme patients to come to this photo studio to get their pictures taken so we could interview them and share their stories. And it was like one of the first times in a long time that I had been in a room with a bunch of Lyme patients. And I knew that day that this was going to work because you could feel it in the room, like the relief and the joy and the excitement and just being in a whole group of people, and everybody understood what everyone else was dealing with. I mean, it was like palatable. People didn't want to leave. People were there all day. Like, it was just so incredible. And I remember like leaving that day and thinking like, I think this is going to work. I just think this is going to work. And it's amazing to hear Fallon and Grace, you guys talk about like finding us, because we had conversations of like, what are people going to think or say to themselves when they find us? What are people going to need? What can we provide that people need? And it's amazing that like the exact embodiment of those conversations has come true. And now you guys are part of it. And it's just, oh, it's just so special. I just love it so much.
It is so special.
I say it all the time, but like I love being with a lot of Lyme people because they're my people. Like like I think Lyme patients are superheroes. You know, like you deal with more on a daily basis than most people can possibly imagine. And people come to our meetups and are kind and generous and supportive and loving and caring while dealing with like unimaginable pain and discomfort. And oh, I just think it's incredible. I just love it so much. Oh, I just want to hug everybody. Okay, so I really would love to know, like, has there been, like, I know for me before when I was sick, and then I found my own group through my doctor's office, and they were a huge lifeline for me. Like, literally, I went from, like, I don't know if I want to be alive anymore to, like, I found these people, and I was like, I need to live, and I need to help these people, and they're helping me, and I love them, and I'm obsessed with them. And having this group when I was at my worst was unimaginably helpful, which is part of the reason why I wanted to start work with Generation Lyme in the first place. Are there ways in which being a part of this community specifically has had an impact on your, like, daily lives, like moment to moment? If you'd been by yourself, like, if you can imagine what your lives would be like if you were still, like, trying to figure it out on your own versus now, what are some of the differences that you can see happening?
I wouldn't be here. I'm telling you right now, I wouldn't be here. I mean, I know that's bleak, but I'm just saying, like, having support that's not a therapist and not a doctor and just somebody else who understands was life-changing for sure. Because I was in a very, like you were talking about, I was in a really, and I've heard obviously a ton of stories at this point. I think we've all reached a point or been pushed to a point where we kind of reach a point of just being like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to do this anymore, you know? So I totally feel grateful and, like, just really appreciative of just hearing people be like, I'm glad that you're still here. And I say that every time in my meetups because I'm just like, I mean it. I'm glad that we're all still here. We have to live to tell this tale. You know what I'm saying? The stories of our health is so crazy. Lyme disease is so crazy. We all have to be here to, like, prove that it happened, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I feel like. I am, my mom talks about it. She cries a lot. She's like, I'm just so glad that you found this, because I was in a really bad spot, you know, before. And it kind of motivated me to be like, okay, there are other people in the world that get it. So I can kind of just like, and I say this at the end of my meetup every week, or my women's one. I'm just like, I feel motivated to keep going because I hear strong women, you know, keep going. That every week they're faced, like you said, with unimaginable pain and suffering. And some of them have children, and some of them are working, or they're in school, or all of the above, or whatever, or not at all because they can't, but they're still surviving. You know what I mean? And it's super inspirational to, like, and I'm like, okay, I have to keep going for them too. Like it's definitely it's been an uplifting experience for me for sure. So
yeah, it's bigger than just you. now.
Right.
It's for them
Right.
also, and vice
Right.
versa. And that's a really special relationship, I think.
Yeah.
Fallon, what about you? How has being a part of this crazy little community impacted your life?
Uh, it would probably be quicker for me to tell you the ways in which it hasn't, but uh, I, because so part of my prior many years of isolation, I think not having a community, you don't see that people are able to do the things while they're going through stuff. And I always try to
When you
toe the
say
line.
isolation, do you just mean like you weren't talking to anybody at all, or you just weren't talking about Lyme stuff?
Oh, no, I mean, like, literally, I would go to my chiropractic appointment and I would like stay longer to talk to the receptionist because like that was my socialization for the week. Like,
Yeah.
I really like
I
it
totally
was
get
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really hard to explain to people how it isn't laziness, but when you go so many years without seeing a way, again, we live in this like ableist society where I dropped out of high school. So I don't have like skills that I can say, I did this in school, and so give me a job. And so I think I went, and also dropping out of high school, I went so many years being like, oh, like I'm like, I got my GED before I would have graduated. I was like, I'll just wait until I'm better and then do life again. And I think I didn't realize I had put my life on hold for so long. And I think finding this group, I've seen that it's really okay to be at whatever place. And like, that's the thing, like, I really am like, y'all, please show up on your worst days. And like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But also, I've seen people like flourish even in the midst of these horrible circumstances. And literally every single day, it reminds me, oh, right, like the ruts that I'm stuck in, I have the ability to still change, which again, I would never tell anyone else what they can or can't. Like there sometimes are ruts that are just we're stuck because this illness is terrible.
Yeah.
But it's opened my eyes to like so many different ways that I can be living because I get to witness other people doing that every day. So yeah, like literally my daily routine is completely different. I'm not literally every day I have other humans that aren't my parents or medical professionals to speak with, which is great because I hate speaking with the medical professionals. But yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. We're like, that's a whole other thing too. But yeah, I mean, so from like my like life trajectory to every week I'm like, oh, it's Thursday again and I get to go hang out with my buddies. And then yeah, every day just daily communication with people that I've connected with that I literally cannot imagine my life without now. It's been completely life-changing.
Guys, those are really good answers.
Top that.
Brooke,
we're not paid actors.
Definitely not. Brooke, I'm actually interested in hearing from you. How has being a part of this community specifically, the Generation Lyme community, impacted your life?
Hard to answer because like Fallon said, just in so many ways. What I thought of first, and let's just see where I go with this. The meetup that I typically host is on Saturday night. And I'm sure anyone listening can think of a lot of fun things that they might want to do on a Saturday night. And sometimes I ask myself if there are other things I might want to do on a Saturday night. But the truth is, I derive so much happiness from leading a meetup at 6 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday night with all my Generation Lyme friends and patients and new people that I'm just meeting on a weekly basis, that part of the answer to this question is I just derive a sense of happiness being a part of this community and meeting every individual amazing person, like Fallon, like Grace, like Jesse, and so many other people. And I really get joy from that, that experience or type of communication. In addition, it's been, helping Generation Lyme become an organization has been the realization of something like really innate that I worked on for a long time, which is I just want to take my own Lyme experience and help other people. And it wasn't obvious how that was going to be done, but we figured it out at Generation Lyme. And so part of the joy of this community for me is having just watched it get built and watch people also derive joy from being part of the community. And that is really special, and it's entrepreneurial, but it's also so people oriented and human focused. And there are just like so few places or communities these days where you can just go and people kind of like get you, they understand you, and whatever you're doing is going to get listened to and validated and is effectively okay. And if we can simply provide that in a Generation Lyme meetup that Grace is running, or Jesse, you're running, or Fallon's running, it's hard to think of something that is, more valuable than that. It's just like a really special thing. And I love it. And that's why I keep hosting meetups at 6 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday night. Like it's really that simple.
For between 1 and 3 hours every I have to say, being a part of Generation Lyme, one thing, especially during the pandemic, that it gave me was purpose, because I'm a musician. I didn't travel or play or do anything. So literally for multiple years, like the only reason I knew what day it was because we have our board calls on Sunday and I was hosting on Wednesday. That's the only reason I knew what day of the week it was. Otherwise, every day was the same. But I also was thinking about it while you guys were talking, and being a part of this community and being especially in a leadership role, which we all are, it shows me that like I get to say how my life goes. And what I mean by that is like I'm married, I have a wife, and it's a huge responsibility, it's a huge burden on her that I do this. Like Wednesday nights, we haven't had a date night on a Wednesday night in years because I'm hosting, and Sunday nights we have our calls and she has to take care of the dog, and like it's a huge thing for her, but she understands how important it is to me. But also, like, I know that like 7 o'clock on Sundays I need to be on the phone. I know that Wednesdays at 8 Eastern time I'm gonna be in front of a computer, regardless of like what state I'm in, like literally whose house I'm at. Like I've left dinner parties, I've left birthday parties, because it's important to me, and I get to say like this is important, so I'm going to make sure that I get to continue doing it, as opposed to like being at the effect of my life. And we could easily, any of us on this call, on the board, Haley and Jennifer, we could easily have like let life get in the way and go like, well, I'm just like too busy and it would be easier not to. But it's important to us, and we get to, for me, it's actually really powerful to be like, this is important to me, I'm going to do this, and whatever other circumstances are in my life, I'm going to make it work. I just am, and I don't know if I've ever thought that before until right now. But yeah, I get so much purpose and joy out of these people and these calls and these, I don't know, all of it. Hosting this podcast, I love that we get to do this and talk to amazing people about things that are so interesting and important. Who gets to do this? Nobody gets to do this, So I just love it so much. I think it's great. You guys are all so awesome. These just all turn into love fest. That's all it is. Also, I feel like I'm the only one talking and asking questions, and you guys are super allowed to chime in if there's anything that you want to say. So I guess that's my segue into, do you guys have any questions or comments or things that you want to ask the other people on this call in relation to community? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm like, I did not think about this. No, I'm just super grateful that you guys do. I mean, I love on the board all the time in my meetups. I certainly do. Just because I'm like, we would not be here obviously without you guys doing what you do too. I said to Haley one time, I was like, you guys made the thing like Fallon and I, we like do the thing, and they're both very important, but
Extremely.
it's a symbiotic relationship. So I'm just very grateful, and like, again, you talk about purpose, like it gave me a purpose again. I was like, okay, there's people who, like you said, scheduling wise, I mean, yeah, I work from home, I do school from home, and I volunteer from home, but scheduling wise, I'm kind of busy. But like, I'm like, no, like on 8 p.m. on Sundays, like I have my little group and they need to hear from me. Or on the fourth Friday on at 8 p.m., my college group of people, they need to hear from me too. And we just need to be together, because sometimes people just need that. It's a human experience, just need that in a bad situation. So yeah.
Have any of you had any circumstances where community made things more complicated or challenging, or where it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows and you were like, oh no?
I mean, oh no, that dramatically is like.
Have we
She's
met?
like, tone it down, Jesse.
I'm very dramatic,
Don't put words in my mouth. But yeah, I mean, I think especially, well, I don't know. I've had this conversation with a couple other people now. But yeah, you show up and you want to connect with people who understand you, and you do. And then I think there's a couple things. I think Lyme I don't think I've met a single person who isn't like more empathetic because of what they've gone through. And so I think it can be very difficult to set boundaries and not completely burn yourself out doing your part in community. And oh man, I'm realizing I have so much to say about this. Little segue off of that, because we've all, I think, done the like, this is what I'm made for and it feels like what I need to do. And I just really want to make sure that people know it isn't the only beneficial way to show up in community, and that like every single week, like I'm like, these wouldn't happen if you and you and you and you, every single person on the screen wasn't there. Absolutely. And I've started making a point to like thank the people that are just listening and be like, I just want you to like hear your name said, because you being here and just listening or participating in the chat or whatever you feel up to doing is so much more than enough. And so I just don't want anyone to be like, oh, like I need to be, again, like burning myself out, going above and beyond what I feel like I can do. Or like, again, we're all the types of people who are really comfy with this type of thing. I don't know if I'd say super comfy, but we're comfortable enough to host a meetup.
I used to get so nervous before meetups. I would I was like sweating, heart palpitation, freaking out for years. I mean,
for sure.
Like we used to, those first meetups, like we would all call each other and be like, here's how it went. I don't know. I think it was terrible. I hate everything. Like, it's so scary. It's a lot of responsibility, right? It's a lot.
And that's the thing is, I don't want anyone to feel like they need to take on that responsibility. And, like just however you're comfortable showing up is good enough. And I think that's the thing that sometimes when it, again, going back to like, how can it not all be sunshine and roses, is convincing yourself you need to show up as more than you're prepared to, or more than you are, or differently than you are. Like what's great about community is that we're all different. And also I think, sometimes, because again, we're like, it feels like family, and it is. You need to remember, sometimes family is not all sunshine and roses.
Totally.
Right.
You got the uncle that you don't want to spend dinner with or whatever,
You love your siblings, but you hate your siblings sometimes. Yeah.
So, I think learning that you don't need to be best friends with everybody, and that your relationships with everyone are going to be different. I had a therapist years ago who was like, you can have like the friend you just get coffee with, and that's okay. Like not everyone needs to be someone that you can do all the things in life with. And so I think remembering that can sometimes be tough. But I think, so that's one of the difficult parts of it. But I guess I'm giving that reminder to everyone listening, like, show up exactly how, is comfortable for you. Don't push yourself too hard.
And
take care of yourself.
Yeah, like you said, Jesse, it can be it feels like a large responsibility. Like, you know, like
It
people
is.
are trusting you to kind of listen to them, and they're talking about some heavy stuff sometimes. And as they should, obviously this is a space for that, but sometimes it's just like, you know, you can't fix everything for them, and that's hard for me. At least I'm a pretty uh, empathetic person, I guess. I don't want to like do my own harm, but like I would say that it is hard for me sometimes. Like I've heard stories where I've left a meetup, I'm just like, I hope I did everything I could for them, because I am moved by what they had to say, but it is so hard to hear what they had to say, you know. But it's a large responsibility, and as I guess we're like community leaders in that way, you know what I mean. But and sometimes that's hard too, because you know we deal with the same conditions as other people do, and sometimes it's hard to like put on your best face for every single meetup, even though you don't feel good. Like I've started a bunch of meetups. I mean, this is gross. I've like gotten sick right before a meetup and then turned the camera on and be like, hey guys, what's up? I'm not sick, you know, even though I'm like, oh, I have Lyme too.
Wait, but
like,
why? No, that's really interesting though. But why wouldn't you
yeah,
just come as exactly how you are and like, listen, guys,
yeah,
I feel terrible today.
yeah. I mean,
Like,
I should, I definitely
yeah.
should. And
Oh, that's so
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, I don't know. I guess I feel, I don't want it to make it about me, which I know is weird because like nobody makes me feel that way. It's not that. It's just like I want the space to be as open for as many people as possible. But at the same time, it is like it's a space for me too. Like obviously leaders can share at the beginning too, and we do. But it is difficult sometimes to kind of like be like, you know what, I'm like really grouchy today and I'm having a hard day, and I'm not going to take it out on any of you obviously, but I'm just like having a rough day, you know.
I say that when I host a lot.
Yeah.
That's in your beginning of
That's
this is
sort of
not medical advice, we love you, I'm grouchy
I'm
today.
grouchy. Well, no, but we put in the host handbook. It specifically says like don't get attached to how meetups are supposed to look because
Yeah.
I had an idea of how I thought meetup like the perfect meetup would go, and if it didn't line up with that, I would be devastated.
Yeah.
And I let everybody down, and why am I doing this, and frustrated and sad and upsetting. Meanwhile, the people the feedback we were getting from those meetups was like it was great, thank you so much, and I was over here being miserable. So like however, just like Fallon is saying, however you are is perfect, however you show up is perfect. Grace, however you show up is perfect. You do not need to be in a
I
good mood
know.
every time you
I
do it.
know. And I know.
We
And
can't
I
all be
nobody
Brooke and be happy all the time.
he is the happiest guy. He should be. He's the
Oh,
best.
thank
But
God. Thank God for Brooke. That's all I can say.
yeah, he's the rain of sunshine. The ray of sunshine. Yeah.
He
Yeah,
is.
I know. But yeah, it's difficult. I think it's weighing responsibility, and like I said, I I have spent a lot of years trying to kind of pretend that I wasn't sick, and now this is like a safe space to like acknowledge that I'm sick, and I'm still kind of like retraining myself to be like I'm sick too, you know.
Mhm.
Like, oh no, I'm fine. No, I'm not fine, you know. Like, so but it
Good
is
for
it
you.
is it's a lot of responsibility, but it's good responsibility. Like I said, I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm very grateful for it, but it is sometimes just like, oh man, like my brain is not working today, guys. So I hope this meetup goes well because I don't know what's gonna happen, you
Yeah.
know.
Yes.
So
And
yeah,
everybody on those calls can relate to that, right?
yeah,
Everybody.
yeah,
And that's where too, like just, we're four hosts here kind of in the echo chamber of like, what is it like to be a host? But more people are going to be listening to this that have never hosted. And I think, that's there's been so many times that again, to the point of being a community, every single person there, like, yes, we show up and we turn on the Zoom and we let people in and we're facilitating, making sure it runs. But like there's times where I think things get handled better because there's things that people are going to be dealing with that I don't understand because I haven't lived their life circumstance. And so like I'm so grateful for everyone else who shows up being like, yeah, we're all sharing this. Like it isn't all on me to make that person's experience feel like I can say words to know that they're heard, but oftentimes it's someone else there that makes them feel super seen and validated because they've lived through something so similar. And
Mhm.
so I'm very grateful that everyone else is it's like we're all just like trading vulnerabilities and being like, oh, like I went through that too, and I can't always do that because I haven't always been through the thing. So there's times where I just step back and go like, I can't control how this happens, but thankfully there's someone here who can help. And so yeah, like I've had to, initially there was like, there's a lot of responsibility hosting, and yes, but also I think it's like a shared, you know, system now. It's like an ecosystem where we all just like kind of slot into our spots and make it all run the way it runs because we're all different. So yeah.
I love that. Well, you guys are amazing. I'm going to ask one last question just to sort of wrap this up. And Brooke, we're going to start with you. And I just want to, if there's somebody listening who even after all of this is like still on the fence about being a part of this, maybe this is the way they get their community, is just listening to a podcast or going online or something. What is something that you would say to somebody who is like new in the Lyme world and maybe thinking about coming to a meetup?
Yeah, great question. You can be part of the Generation Lyme community merely by following the account, right? And so it's simple, and don't put pressure on yourself to be more involved than you want. Is part one. Part two. I mean, this is personal to me, but some of my favorite moments are at meetups are when someone introduces themselves and says, I've been thinking about coming to a meetup for a long time, and this is the day that I'm doing it. It's very similar to what Fallon was talking about earlier. Or if someone comes to a meetup and they say, I've had Lyme for 20 years and I just don't have anyone to talk about it with. And then they all of a sudden have 15 Lyme friends like at the meetup. Or lastly, if someone comes to a meetup and they are from a state in the US or a country for which there are just like lesser known cases of Lyme. So in the US, a state that's not in the, the Northeast. In any of these situations, it's like almost emotional for me that like a person who was looking for this kind of community but didn't know how to find it, like finds it. That's a sensational moment. And I feel grateful like every time I get to be part of someone's moment in that case. So I guess it's a long way of saying you can be part of the Generation Lyme community by literally just having Instagram on your phone, or you could sort of have something inside you that says you've been looking for other Lyme friends for a long time, and you can find them as simply as signing up for a meetup and like clicking that Zoom link at the right time of the day, and then you'll have 15 new Lyme friends. And I just think it's amazing every single time that I see that happen for someone.
I love that so much, Brooke. Grace, do you have something that you would want to say to somebody who's not even like considering joining a meetup, but just like newly diagnosed, figuring out, what this is and what to do next and all that stuff?
Yeah. First of all, it's really scary. And I know that. And all of us here know that. It's really scary, and you're okay. It's okay to be scared. And it's also really hard to navigate. So like there's that. So I would say give yourself some props for even being able to start to navigate it. Especially, I always get emotional hearing like juvenile teenage cases because I was one. But adults too, obviously. Anybody who's dealing with this is really a superhero to me. But I would also just say like give yourself grace, no pun intended. But like hey, but like don't be I can't ever be too serious. Don't be too hard on yourself. Like your limitations. I'm somebody who burns the candle at both ends a lot. And my mom is like, dude, I told you that this is going to go bad. And I was like, I know, but I felt good for a little bit and then I didn't feel good anymore. And so just like be real with yourself, but don't feel bad for having to say no. That's another thing I've had to learn. And just like know that there is always hope. And even when it feels like there isn't, and there will be times where it doesn't. And if you found out you have Lyme, you've probably already been through that. Just know that like it will get better. even if it doesn't seem like it right now. And even if it's like not the better that we're all imagining, where we're 100% better and running marathons or whatever, like I'm not 100% better yet. You know, I got a long way to go, but I'm a lot better than I was like 2 years ago. And that's a win. So I would just say, like, don't be too hard on yourself, and every little bit step forward, even if it doesn't feel like it, is a step forward. So that's what I would say.
That's great. Fallon, what about you? Same question.
Yeah. I think well, interestingly, I was one of those people who knew very little about Lyme. So maybe you're very excited about your Lyme diagnosis, and congratulations, because you don't know yet.
Yeah.
Right. It's about to get worse. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's a tough road, and you know, no one will ever know your exact experience except for you. But I think having some sort of support and dialogue with people is helpful. And yeah, whatever way feels the most comfortable to you, like, do that. And yeah, I feel like I have like versions of sort of what Grace said. Well, it's interesting that you said give yourself grace, because I try to at every meetup say, you know, I hope you all have a good night, but give yourselves the grace to have whatever kind of night you need to have, because sometimes it's not always good, and I think we can want to force ourselves into that good. So I'm like, fill in the blank for whatever you need. And yeah, know that like the littlest of progress is good, and you know, 5% better is still better, 1% better is still better than you were yesterday. And if you backslide, that isn't really that's just the reality of it, you know. And so I think learning to trust your instincts is super important. And that's the thing, even when it comes to Generation Lyme, like I think there's people who show up every week, and if you have a week where you're like, I'm not feeling it, don't force yourself to go if you don't feel like it. Or if, you know, I just think there's so much nuance to our symptoms and our mental states that I'm just like, that I think anytime someone's diagnosed with any chronic illness, but Lyme for sure, like hone in on your gut instincts and really trust those, because no one will ever know better than you what is best for you. Yeah. So yeah.
Love that. Well, that is going to do it. I think we're going to wrap it up here. That was amazing. You guys are so amazing. Grace and Fallon, thank you so much for being here. Brooke, always a pleasure. On behalf of Generation Lyme, my name is Jesse Ruben. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this podcast, please rate us 5 stars on the Apple Podcast app or wherever you get your podcast. It's very important. And if you're interested in learning more about Generation Lyme or coming to a meetup, you can go to our website at genlyme.org. We have all of that information there. If you would like to host, you can find that information there too. Come hang out with us. We're super fun, and sometimes we're not fun, but we're helpful. So either way, come hang out with us.
Do what we can.
We do what we can, and there's always a place for you at Generation Lyme. We promise. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again very soon. Thanks, guys. You guys did awesome.
Thank you.